This year I reach a significant age milestone, and I was thinking the other day about my career. Now, when I first started in the motor trade, it's fair to say that things weren't quite exactly what they are now. I mean, the Porsche 911 was still cooled by air, and the Range Rover that was on sale at the time was still the original shape that when it was first launched. The Mini was still, well, Mini, and you could still buy a new Metro. And if you're a Formula One fan, get your head around this. Max Verstappen, not only was he not even born, but his father, Jos Verstappen, hadn't started his Formula One career. And the only reason that you bought a Hyundai was because they were cheap. Now, much like the Japanese manufacturers back in the 70s and 80s, during sort of like the 90s and the noughties, the Korean manufacturers wanted to get a foothold in the European car market, and that's what they gave us. They gave us dull but reliable, cheap little cars, and there's no way you could even have thought about them back then being mentioned in the same breath as the likes of BMW or Mercedes-Benz, let alone be the same price as one. Well, of course, things have changed now, and not only is this car the same price as a BMW, but it might even just be better. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the Hyundai Ioniq 6 all-wheel drive, and of course, as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get started in this week's road test review of the new Hyundai Ioniq 6 all-wheel drive, it is of course that time when I'm going to ask you to make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Once you've done that, press the little bell button down below, because then that way you'll be notified of when our next video is live and uploaded. Once you've watched the video, if you do enjoy it, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and of course don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let us know what your thoughts are on the cars that we review, such as Hyundai's Ioniq 6 and of course the AutoEV channel as a whole. Now, it'll be a slightly shorter road test review this week because we've featured the Hyundai Ioniq 6 quite a lot on the channel. We did a sneak peek of it, and of course I did a full road test review of the car when it was launched here in the UK. But back when it was launched in the UK, not only was it a very wet day, but I only got to really spend the day with the car, and it was a single motor car. And I'd said at the end of that video I wasn't very sure whether or not I would prefer that or the Ioniq 6 or the Polestar 2. And of course since then we've now driven the updated Polestar 2. So I wanted to give you a bit more of a decisive answer. And this is a slightly different car to the one that I originally road tested, because this is the dual motor car. So this is the faster one, top of the range one that Hyundai do. So I thought it was as well to spend a little bit more time with it. So I've had the car for quite a while now, and I've been driving it, so I can bring you the decisive verdict on what I think is the best car in this class, whether it's this or the Polestar 2. But before we move on, let's remind ourselves what the Hyundai Ioniq 6 is all about. Well, it's a medium-sized, fully electric saloon car that's built using the company's eGMP platform, which means that it's designed and priced to compete with cars such as the Tesla Model 3, the Polestar 2, BMW's i4 and Volkswagen's new ID.7. It's offered with just one battery size in the UK, with a choice of either single or dual motor powertrains. It has a range of up to 338 miles in the single motor car, and it's priced between £47,000 to just over £55,000, depending on the final specification. So is it this faster, more expensive dual motor car that is the pick of the Ioniq 6 range? And as I say, remember, we've now driven the updated Polestar 2, and as I've just said, we've also got the Volkswagen ID.7 incoming, which is going to compete in this market space. Not only that, but the Tesla Model 3 is going through a big refresh as well. So how are we going to find out whether this is worth your money or not? Well, of course, by putting it through the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that is the AutoEV one. Now, as always, we're starting with styling, but we've talked about the Ioniq 6 style quite a lot in the last two videos, so I won't harp on too much about it. But I'm going to start by talking about the game of chess. Chess, believe it or not, because that's how Hyundai sort of like see their cars now. They don't see them as being all the same, of that kind of sort of Russian doll styling of Audi. You see, what they have is the commonality of being part of the same team, like on a chessboard, but each having their own individual style. They always have a common theme running through them, and that theme with Hyundai is the pixel, because you'll see them all around the car. They're in the daytime running lights down here, they're in the headlights, and of course you see them down here as well. 6 pixels on the bottom there, because obviously it's the Ioniq 6. But it's a very different car to the Ioniq 5 and the new Kona, which is coming out. And although that's not part of the Ioniq family as such, It has, again, its own individual style that follows the pixel theme throughout the car. The inspiration for the Ioniq 6 is the 1930s Raymond Loewy sort of streamliner style, so you can see a huge amount of inspiration taken from there. And as I've said before, there's a lot of other cars sort of like in this sort of styling that you'll see as we go around it. I think it's a great looking car. Now, it's going to divide opinion, of course it is, and there's some people looked at this car and gone, wow, that looks phenomenal, and others have gone, oh, it's a bit dumpy looking at the back and things. Personally, I love the car. I think it looks phenomenally good. A couple of little things to mention about active cooling down at the bottom here. You'll see these flaps, they will open and close as the batteries need cooling. As I say, you've got the common theme of the pixels running through the lights there, the big bold new Hyundai logo that's in that satin kind of finish there. I do prefer it in a lighter colour because I quite like this black strip that runs across the front here. That's not only got the parking sensors but the little camera as well in that. So I like this kind of, this gravity gold. It's one of the matte finishes you get the car in, and it's one of the only two options that are on the car. But I do like it in a sort of lighter colour. You'll also notice this car's got the digital side mirrors, and I'll talk about them a bit more when we're discussing them. What have we got? Well, of course, we've got more cooling, sort of like at the sides there, and just going there, you've got this lovely kind of dive plane there, and there's a really nice little feature just on the wheel arch here, which you'll see, the sort of like black sort of like dive plane. It takes airflow around the wheels as well. And of course, as I say, the side profile, that's where you see that kind of aero kind of shape that it got. Now, Raymond Loewy's past designs include things such as Studebaker cars, Greyhound buses, and of course his most famous design, which we still use today. And you know what that is? Coca-Cola bottle. So well done if you guessed that right. Right, 20-inch wheels, standard across the range. There are different designs on the base car and this Ultimate one, but they're still 20 inches. Pirelli P0 tyres that you get as well on the vehicles. Flush door handles, aiding with that streamlined kind of shape, and you see it's much less kind of edgy and sharp like the Ioniq 5, and much more, as I say, streamlined. Now, I've spoken before about the kind of influences that you can see in the design of the car, which is a lot sort of like Saab, the Saab 9-2, that type of thing. I can see a bit of Mercedes-Benz CLS around this area here, and as you move around the back, you see things such as the Porsche 911 as well. But as I say, we're not going to focus too much on the design because we've talked about it an awful lot, but it's still a sharp-looking car, I think. So now you can see that sort of like 911 influence, can't you, with the sort of like the full width kind of lights running underneath there, and of course your kind of separate whale tail. You've got a little kind of ducktail kind of spoiler there, like you might get in a 1970s Carrera RS. And as I say, this reminds me a lot of the Saab 900 turbos of the 80s, where they had that kind of big wing sticking at the base of the rear screen. It's a 3-box saloon, it's a booted saloon, it's not a hatchback. But say, yeah, look at the pixels all around the car. There's 6 on the sort of like the charging flap here. This high level brake light is pixelated, and of course the pixels all around the back of the car. And then these vertical ones down here, which is your rear fog lights and reversing lamps. Now, as I say, I really like the look of this car, but it's a controversial car. And I say not everyone's going to be a big fan of it. But what do you think? Do you like it? Would this tempt you out your Tesla Model 3? As always, let us know in the comments down below. Now, boot space is 401 litres, which is the smallest in the class, in fairness. And of course, as I say, it's a 3-box saloon, so you don't have the practicality of the lift back of, say, the Polestar 2, the BMW i4. Still, it's a reasonably decent aperture, and there's a small amount of underfloor storage for one of the cables and your tire mobility kit, but the other cable has to come in this bag here. But as I say, it's not bad, and of course, you do get folding rear seats, but you can get a big suitcase tucked right into the back there. We can get the small one down the side there, medium one there, and then you'd also get room for a couple of cabin bags. I've only got one in this moment, and then of course rucksacking as well. So yeah, it's not bad, but as I say, it is the smallest car in its class, but you do get a small amount of under bonnet storage. But because of the dual motor, it's a bit smaller than the single motor car that we first reviewed. Yeah, so as I say, with the dual motors, much like it is in the rest of the sort of Hyundai and Kia ranges, you do get a small amount of storage, but it is very, very small. Still, it's probably enough for an extra charging cable if you had another one, or the sort of the 3-pin sort of like granny charger as well. That could fit neatly in there if you wanted. But yeah, don't bank on getting many suitcases underneath here. So, you know, as far as the Hyundai Ioniq 6 is concerned, it does trail the Tesla Model 3 in this department. All right, rear accommodation. Well, it's the same as before, in fairness. It's good. Absolutely fine back here. Now, that's not quite my driving position because the seat slides back when you leave the car. But even so, I have got a lot of legroom. Footroom, however, is tight, and I've always found this with Hyundai. I can't get my feet underneath my seat, and I know I like my seat low, so that's maybe not. But it is quite kind of tight in terms of footroom if you want to get your feet underneath the front driver's seat. Accommodation in the back is good. You get 3 across, no problem. Completely flat floor, as you'd expect, sitting on the eGMP platform. Headroom's fine. Yeah, I'm 5'8", so it's all right for me. As you're maybe 6 foot, that roof line's starting to kind of droop down at the back, so you might find it a little bit tight if you're carrying sort of like 6 foot passengers. Other than that, it'll be fine. Storage, flip down armrest. We've got the 2 cup holders in there, which is good. There's just narrow door bins in the back, but they will take a child's water bottle. In fact, they take actually quite a big water bottle, so that's fine. So that's good. And there's a tiny little, just little bin in there for, I don't know, a packet of Polar Mints or something. 2 USB-C chargers ports there. Net style mat pockets on the backs of the seats, and talking to children, there is ISOFIX points, one on either side, but they're not easy to get to. You've got to kind of jab the seat through between the sort of the seat back and the squab, so just bear that in mind. So, but there's certainly enough room, and certainly if you've got one of the bigger style of seats that kind of swivel round, the baby seats swivel round, there's more than enough space here. Plus as well, you can also adjust the front passenger seat from back here as well, so if you need extra, you know, if you need to adjust it to get extra space when you're putting kiddies in the back or whatever, there's adjustment available so you can nudge the seat a little bit forward. So yeah, on the whole, good. Not best in class, certainly not the worst. Now, I'm not going to go on too much about it in here because it is pretty much what we saw before, a bit like the styling, but it's always worth a little recap for those that maybe haven't seen the initial road test or sneak peek that we did of the car. And as I say, because I've been living with this car a little bit longer now, I've kind of got used to the little foibles and the things that I like and the things that I don't like about it. So I'll talk a bit more about them rather than everything else. But just to recap, you've got a very similar layout to the Ioniq 5 in the sense that you have the twin 12-inch displays. They're a bit more cohesive in design, so that you can't really see the split, but it's one kind of panel, a bit like you get with the Mercedes-Benz. You get the 2 12-inch screens there that are mounted up. I still have an issue, like I do in all Kias and Hyundais, with the steering wheel. Once I get it in the right position, it just cuts off that area, the speedo for me, and then you get your range over there. Trip meter in the middle, which as I say is great, but I'd like to be able to configure it more and have the speed there. But you do get a head-up display in this ultimate spec, so that kind of alleviates the situation with the speed. What is infuriating is the number of bings and bongs the car has. You know, you probably hear it when we go out driving. You eke over the speed limit by 1 mile an hour and it starts to beep at you. Now you can obviously turn these things off, but they come back on when, you know, it's a default on when you, and I know I'm a bit of an old fuddy-duddy, but I just wonder whether all this is really necessary. Anyway, that's that. Right, I'm going to talk about the most important thing here, which is these digital door mirrors. Now, I'm not a big fan of them. I'm not a big fan of these cameras for mirrors, and I'll tell you for why. There's a few reasons. First of all, the only people I think that get it right are Honda in the Hyundai E, because the camera's mounted down on the door. Audi get it very wrong because they're mounted on stocks, which means your eye, by muscle memory, is drawn to the camera pod on the stock, which is the same here. But where Audi really fail badly is the screen's too small and it's mounted on the door. Whereas the Hyundai, at least it's a little bit like the Honda, it's kind of mounted where you expect the mirror to be. But as I say, your eye is immediately drawn to the camera first, then to the screen. So that's the first thing about it. The other thing I don't like about it as well is, when you're driving, if you're reversing, say, and you're using your mirrors and you move your head like this, and obviously you get a different view from the mirror, you don't on these, because it's what the camera sees, not what you can see. So that's the second thing I don't like about them. So you don't get a different view. And I don't think they adjust enough. I don't think they come up slightly high enough. I've got them as high as they'll go, and I don't get a particularly clear view out of them. The third thing I don't like about them is, especially in the kind of autumnal months, when, you know, the cars, when you go out to the car and there's kind of condensation on it and some rain, when you start off, the view is very hazy. It's like those old kind of 1980s photographers that used to use Vaseline around the lens of the camera to make something look really hazy and kind of glamorous. That's what it looks like in here. So until it warms up, you don't get a particularly clear view. So I honestly think it's, you know, it's having them for having them's sake. They're no better than having a mirror there. So I would save the £1,000 that it costs to have these and just go with the mirrors. The mirrors are nice. They don't ruin the look of the car at all. So yeah, I'm not a fan. So I've used them, don't like them. I'd leave them if I was you. Right, the rest of the interior is good. I like it. You get kind of pixelated kind of design on here, and the same here. The other thing that I don't particularly like is the wireless charging pad. Whilst it's a nice kind of grippy rubber, there are sometimes when you accelerate, your phone moves around on it. It'd be nice if it had a little ledge at the back to kind of hold your phone better in place. But that's a minor point in some respects. 2 cup holders, which are great. Storage is excellent. Not only do you get these 2 cup holders here, there's a little slot there, there's a wireless charging pad there, there's a massive centre bin down there, then there's this huge tray underneath this console. So it's not the kind of movable console you get in Ioniq 5, but storage is just huge. You know, you can drop, you know, iPads or, you know, laptops down into that tray down there, and it's ideal. You also get a really good glove box which slides out on a drawer like it does in Ioniq 5, which I do like as well. That's nice. Now the materials, a lot of recycled materials in here, and you can tell, and Hyundai have made a big kind of song and dance about the fact they're all made from you know, recycled plastics. So in terms of the quality, the feel of them maybe doesn't feel as nice as, you know, the soft touch stuff that you maybe get in other cars, but the build quality is huge. You know, I mean, everything's well screwed together, nothing moves, and there's no squeaks or rattles from it. But as I say, you can tell the type of materials used, and I do quite like it. I have to say, I like this kind of ribbed pattern on the door. It is a harder plastic, but as I say, it's nice. And then it's got this massive big translucent door bin as well, which again is kind of hard plastic. It's not lined, but I like the fact that it's just a different design. I really do like that. There's a couple of things that feel a bit cheap. Same as the Ioniq 5, the door handles to me don't feel good enough. They feel really cheap and kind of nasty. But the rest of it works really, really well. All the buttons have a nice kind of slickness to them. You know, the window buttons there, you know, the indicator stalks, the wipers, you know, the gear shift selector on this column here. That works really, really well. So I do like them. But as I say, it's just a couple of things that kind of let it down a little bit. Steering wheel's nice, nice size, nice shape. It's slightly flattened at the bottom. You get this 2-spoke design. You get most of your major controls grouped on it. So for lane keep assist, cruise control stuff there, that's on the left, and then you get your media controls and your Bluetooth on the right hand side. As I say, you can configure the screen slightly. You can have different things in the centre there, depending obviously what you want to actually see. So that's relatively configurable. Paddles behind the steering wheel, they adjust your brake regen as they do on most of the other Hyundai Group cars, so that's quite nice. The media system itself is all right. It's pretty decent. So you go into your nav or you go into your home screen, there you go, and you've just got your kind of tiles across there. So it's, you know, it's slick, it's fast. Obviously you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it's wired. You've got to have the wire plugged in for that to work. But you know, most people tend to find they don't really have a massive problem with this. Climate controls, they're separate. They're down here. They are touch screen, but you do get a little bit of the beep when you do touch them, depending obviously on what you want. And then there's some physical buttons above that, so to tune your radio, your media to go straight to your map, your navigation's there, and a volume control there, and obviously your stop-start button. Drive mode selectors on the steering wheel, and that's really it. As I say, you know, it's a nice interior. I do like it. I prefer the Polestar 2 in terms of its interior. I see the user interface of the Polestar is easier to use. It's nicer. It's a bit more clear. It's a bit more concise. It's a bit easier to reach as well. But you get a slightly more open feel inside the car. There's a more feeling of space inside the Ioniq 6 than you do in the Polestar 2. A lot of people feel the Polestar, with its kind of high riding centre console, you feel quite closed in. I quite like that, but I know there's a lot of people that I've spoken to who have driven both cars kind of prefer this more kind of open feel. A bit like Tesla is the same, you know, the Model 3 is very much more of a kind of open feel to it. So if you prefer that, then you'll probably get on well with the Ioniq 6 or the Model 3 over the Polestar or the BMW i4. The seats are okay. I find them lacking a little bit in shoulder support in my time with the car. They're not uncomfortable. They've got reasonable lateral support down the sides, but as I say, I think they lack a little bit in shoulder support for me. That's the only thing I would say. But there's a good range of adjustment on them. They're not quite the kind of comfort seats of the Ioniq 5, where you've got the kind of bit that kind of comes out, you know, and lifts your feet like an aircraft style seat. But they've got enough support, certainly for me, which means the driving position, as I say, bar that kind of graphic, which I think is just in the wrong place, the driving position is good. I do like it. So from that point of view, it's a successful interior. I personally, as I say, prefer the Polestar 2. Now, I've lived with both cars for quite a while, but this is a very close runner-up in my book as well. There's a lot to like about here. Huge amount of storage. I love the fact that they're using recycled materials, and it looks a bit different, but it's not overly styled. They haven't just, you know, gone a bit mad with it. The only thing, as I say, is I ditched these cameras. Other than that, I like this. Now in the UK, the Ioniq 6 has one battery size, which is a 77 kilowatt hour battery, and that should see a WLTP range of up to 322 miles. So only slightly down on the single motor car, which is 335 miles. The EV database, however, says a real world range to expect is maybe around about 275 miles, although they do suggest that a combined sort of range you may see up to 315. So somewhere between 280 and 300 miles is a possibility in this car. Now importantly, this is one of the best cars in its class when it comes to charging, because it will take charging speeds of up to 350 kilowatts, meaning you go from your benchmark 10 to 80% in one of those big rapid Ionity chargers in just 18 minutes, which is phenomenally good. And as I say, we always find Hyundais and Kias to be very, very efficient. I've been getting an average of 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour out of this car, so I think that's pretty decent in fairness. 800 volt architecture and the capabilities of 400 volt as well, which is another big boon for the Hyundai group. And of course, it comes with vehicle to load as well as an onboard 11 kilowatt charger. Now, if you're charging up from your 7 kilowatt home wall box, then you're going from flat to full in round about 12 hours. So if you're plumping for a dual motor Ioniq 6, what do you get? Well, you get 325 PS, which is 100 PS more than the single motor car. And it knocks 2 seconds off the 0 to 60 time, bringing it down to 5.1 seconds, there or thereabouts. Does it feel measurably quicker? Yeah, it does. You can feel the difference. You certainly do. You know, but what I want to make very, very clear about this is this isn't a sort of M Sport version of the Ioniq 6 or the BST kind of equivalent, you know, within the Hyundai Ioniq 6 range. It's just a faster Ioniq 6. It doesn't do anything more than the standard car, the single motor car, does, other than go a little bit faster. You still get the same nice driving position, you still get the same driving modes, you still get the same kind of reasonably nice, light, oily feeling steering on it. So my point is, it doesn't offer a huge amount more other than just being a little bit faster than the standard car. Now, I'll talk about those driving modes. I'll talk about the bings and bongs that this car makes, because it makes a huge amount of them. Now, you can turn a lot of these things off, but they're very intrusive and they always default back on. So I am getting a little bit tired of all the bings and bongs of the car. That, as I say, I've spent a week with it. You know, I took my wife to the airport, Heathrow, the other night. She's off on business, and we were driving along the M25, and my daughter in the car, we're all chatting away, but of course we were going up to where there's a speed camera on one of the gantries, and we were way under the speed limit because of traffic. The noise that the car made just frightened the life out of us. They just couldn't understand what was going on, thought something was happening. It's just because there was a speed camera there. It's alerting you to it. And as I say, you can turn it off, but do we need it in the first place? That's my point. Right, so what was I talking about? Driving modes. Yeah, let's talk about the driving modes for a little bit. So in normal mode, the car is absolutely fine. It's got a reasonable ton of speed, there's a nice weight behind the throttle, and the controls all feel very, very good. Now you see there, because I've eked above the speed limit there, it's binging at me. I know I've done that. It's my responsibility. Why do you need to tell me? Shut up! Weight of the controls is very, very nice, as I say. It's a really sort of like nice car to drive. It's a difficult sort of like thing to sort of like maybe put into words, but it's almost like there's a real kind of oily feel to the controls. It feels like it oozes like a kind of warm honey when you just, when you roll your wrists, you get a really nice response back from the steering. It's not pin sharp. An i4 BMW is still the driver's choice in this class for me, but this is good. As I say, it's got a nice kind of feel to the car. It's quite refined as well, and you know that I like my refinement. Even on these shut up. All right, it's a 40mm. I'm doing 41. It's got a nice kind of refinement to the car. Even on the big 20-inch alloys, there's not a huge amount of tyre roar, and it is probably the biggest sort of like noise that you get from the car is the tyres. You don't get wind noise. Obviously, that slippery shape is really good when it comes to sort of like keeping all the wind at bay, or the wind noise at bay. Wish it'd keep those bloody beeps at bay, I tell you. The drive mode button's here on the steering wheel, a little bit like you get on the Porsche Taycan. So you press that and you go into sport. Right, sport, the throttle becomes quite light and really responsive at this point. But it doesn't do anything else. It doesn't sharpen up the dampers, it doesn't change the weight of the steering, or if it does, I certainly can't tell. It feels exactly the same to me. So as I say, it just sharpens up that throttle response. And yeah, you can really feel it when you put your foot down. There's a real, it does kind of pin you back in your seat. Not Tesla fast. I'm not trying to convey that it's like a Tesla Model 3 performance, because it's not. But you do feel the difference. As I say, when you put your foot down, it really gathers speed quite nicely. So yeah, so you do feel the difference with that. And then of course your last mode is your eco mode, where everything just kind of dulls down. You're trying to eke the most range out of the car. But I'll go back to my original point. Would you have this over the single motor car? I'm really not sure you would. I don't know if it offers me enough to spend extra. And okay, the range that it sacrifices isn't huge in terms of its mileage, but it still doesn't do as much in terms of its range as the single motor car. So, as we find with a lot of these kind of performance orientated EVs, do you sacrifice the range to have the performance? Maybe on some, you can feel it being different. Here, I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure it's worthy enough. Here we go. A couple of other things I want to talk about over this blasted beeping noise is the brake regen. Now, I always like Hyundai and Kia the way that the brake regen works. So you get the two paddles behind the steering wheel, and you've got basically 3 levels. So 0 is obviously everything's off. There's no brake regen, and then you got through 1, 2 and 3. If you pull and hold on the paddle, however, it goes into its intelligent mode, where the car will actually determine whether or not it needs the brake regen. So you're coming up to a set of traffic lights, or the car in front is slowing down, and then it'll start to apply the regen as it sees fit. The brake pedal itself has a really nice feel to it. I always like the brake systems on sort of like Hyundais and Kias. They're not as wooden as say some of the Stellantis group cars are. There's got a nice kind of pedal feel, and as it transitions through the regen of the motor onto the actual sort of like pads and discs, you don't feel it. You don't feel there's a step change, which I really like. So that's a very, very good thing. Handling's good. You can certainly feel, the roads are dry at the moment. I've not been driving the car in any adverse conditions, but you get the impression that grip wouldn't be a problem. As I say, you certainly get a good level of grip. It runs Pirelli P0 tyres, which are very good. They seem to have the sort of like the right combination of grip and ride quality. And as I say, yes, there's a little bit of tyre noise, but not a massive amount that would cause you any upset. Certainly not like that. So yeah, I should have switched that off. I apologise. So yeah, so you get a sense that the grip level is very, very good. But as I say, don't get the impression that it's sort of like any kind of sports saloon, because whilst it's not out of its depth, if I pitch it into this roundabout and start to apply some throttle, it tucks in nicely. Yeah, and it changes direction well. But I get more fun with the BMW i4. It's good, it's really good, and the basis is there. And as I say, if they do an N model, then there's going to be sort of like a lot to like about it. I can imagine, certainly with a chassis like this as it is. But as I say, if you're a driver, then the i4 is just that little bit sharper, just that little bit better on turning, just that little bit nicer on the steering, and just a little bit, sort of like heavier there, and you just get a bit more feel through the corners. But this is good. I like it. I like it a lot. But I liked the the Ioniq 6 when I drove it the first time. I don't not like it. As I say, my summary on the car is this: the Ioniq 6 is a good car. I think it's a real brave car from Hyundai again. Like they did with the 5. No one really sort of expected them to come out with a car that was like that, and it's the same here, and it is very, very good. But I do feel that the standard car is just as good, and as I say, you're saving a little bit of money, and you're getting a better range from it. So until they bring out an Ioniq 6N, I think the route to go is the single motor car. Ride quality, as I say, is nice. It deals with most undulations really, really well. I want to talk a little bit more about these mirrors. As I say, I'm not a fan of them. I think they're not good enough. They're a £1,000 option, and it wouldn't be £1,000 of my money. I feel like they need to go up a little bit, and I've adjusted them as high as I can, so they're not particularly great in terms of the vision that I'm getting from them. Yeah, I don't think these are the answer. Now, as I say, your muscle memory is your eye's always drawn to the stop where the camera is first, then you readjust to the screen. Now, it's milliseconds, but it could mean the difference between spotting something and not spotting it, in fairness. One thing to talk about is the safety systems on the car. They're excellent, they're very, very good. A lot of driver assistance systems. So lane keep assist, obviously speed limit warning. It's that gentle tug you get on the steering wheel. You can turn it off from the wheel, the lane keep assist. There's a button here, so you can turn that off if you don't like it. And I must admit, I tend to turn it off. But it's okay, as I say, you just get that little, you can feel the resistance in the wheel if you start to stray a little bit too much. One thing I do love is the blind spot monitoring. Again, it's coming across all the Hyundai and Kia cars. When you flick the indicator on, you get an image from the camera on the dashboard there, what's down the side of the car. So, if you can imagine you're driving in London, or you're, especially now within cycle lanes that there are now in some of the bigger cities, you flick the indicator and you can see down the side. So if there's a cyclist coming up your inside, you'll be able to spot them with that. I really think that's a really important safety feature. It's one of the best safety features on modern cars, and I know Tesla have adopted it as well on their cars. So, kudos to the guys for that. It's a good thing to have, as I say, especially if you drive a lot in the kind of urban area. But yeah, a lot of safety kit on the car. Some of it welcome, some of it not so much. Now, this is an ultimate specification car, which obviously is the top of the range. So with dual motors, this starts at £54,000, just over. And there's only two options that you can actually add to the car. One of which is these digital door mirrors, the other of which is this matte finish paint. So the price of this car, as tested, is £55,920. I'd save myself £1,000 and not bother with these things. Of course, Hyundai, you also get a 5-year unlimited mileage warranty with the car. So not quite as good as the 7-year the Kia gives you, but still a lot better than you get with the likes of Polestar, BMW and Tesla, which are, of course, the main competitors for this car. So let's just go through them. BMW i4, Tesla Model 3, which is about to get a refresh. We're about to see a facelifted version of that car. And of course, earlier this year we saw the updated Polestar 2, which is this car's main rival. Volkswagen's also about to enter the marketplace with its new ID.7 as well. So whilst the crossover SUV market is the sort of more predominant one, there still isn't a shortage of choice when it comes to saloon cars. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the Hyundai Ioniq 6 all-wheel drive. What we like is design. The interior design, build quality, ease of use, and the use of those recycled materials. It's spacious up front. Its refinement and its range and efficiency from the car. And of course the usual Hyundai warranty and after sales care. We don't like, well, it's got the smallest boot in the class. Rear headroom might be a little bit tight for taller passengers. And whilst it is a little bit faster, we don't think the extra money and loss of range is worth it over the single motor car. So two questions. really needed answering with this road test review. First of all, is the Ioniq 6 all-wheel drive the pick of the Ioniq 6 range? Are you better off with a dual motor car over a single motor car? And my answer to that is no. It's quicker, yes, I'll give you that, but it's not a more kind of honed driver's car. It's just not that. I mean, I think obviously there's going to be one. There's going to be an Ioniq 6N, because we saw the concept, the RN22, and we know, of course, that Hyundai are going to bring us the Ioniq 5N. So I think it's a natural assumption that at some stage this is going to have that N version within the range. But whereas the dual motor car that we have here, as I say, just seems to be a slightly faster version of the standard car, and you get a loss of range with it, and I'm not really sure it's worth that, given the fact that it doesn't really do anything better than the single motor car. So that's the first answer to that. The second question needed answering was, is it a better car than the new Polestar 2? No, it's not. I think the Polestar 2 has improved a great deal, and I think in terms of what I would certainly perceive as the better car, it is the Polestar. Don't get me wrong, this is a very good car and I really do like it. I prefer it to the Tesla Model 3, but bear in mind there's a new one of them coming up, so of course the cart of apples is going to be upset yet again perhaps, but that's of course for a different time and a different video. So in terms of the class, the BMW i4 is still the driver's choice, of course, but it carries many compromises with it. Until we drive the new Tesla Model 3, it still remains my least favourite in this sector. But the Ioniq 6 is a good second place, I think, to the Polestar 2, but it is still second place to the Polestar 2. Thank you for watching yet another road test review from us here at AutoEV. As always, please make sure you are now subscribed to the AutoEV channel. And once you've done that, make sure you press the bell button down below, because then you'll be notified when our next video is uploaded and goes live. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let us know what your thoughts are on the cars we review, such as the Hyundai Ioniq 6. And of course, on the channel as a whole. Do you agree with me? Do you have an Ioniq 6, or did you not choose one? Did you choose a single motor over the dual motor? Why did you do that? Have you gone down the route of the Polestar rather than this, or have you got this instead of the Polestar? As always, let us know down in the comments. Now remember, we're across all social media as well, so Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn and even TikTok, so please give us a follow there, because that helps us too. And if you're just a bit bored and you want even more electric news, car reviews from the electric car world, then stick on the YouTube channel, because there's plenty of videos to wade through, including more on the Ioniq 6. So have a little mooch through there and see what you think. As always, all that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support AutoEV as a channel. And I'll see you again soon.